Welcome to the Sweaty Dive Podcast. I am one half of your hosts, Buffcharmander, joined as always by my good pal KG.
Yo. And
this month, the month of April 2022, wow, the year really is flying by. We are here to discuss the 1995 crime classic, directed and written by Michael Mann, starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, Heat. A film known by both casual film fans and full-blown film sweat hogs like ourselves, far and wide. Many performances discussed in this movie a lot, many scenes discussed in this film a lot. And I couldn't help but feel many emotions while watching this movie. And this was my first time watching this film. You, on the other hand, how many times have you watched this movie?
I have watched this movie one time through before. Post-surgery, I was a little bit loopy, if I'm being honest. I was bedridden for a few days, so I was just going through a bunch of random films. And it was like, oh, 3 hours? Okay, great. It's not like I could do anything else. So the first time I watched it the whole way through. This second rewatch, I had to do it in clips just because, you're busy. Try to make like a 3-act structure. What did you think of your first watch there?
So initially going into it, those 3 hours are daunting, but it's weird because I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of movies now are kind of trending towards the long runtimes again. So much so that recently Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the runtime for that movie got released recently. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes. And people online were starting to get a little bit worried about the film because it's only 2 hours and 6 minutes. And it's like, whoa, what did the pendulum swing from wanting shorter films to wanting longer films now? But watching a 3-hour movie at home is a much different experience than watching a 3-hour movie in a theater. I find myself more locked in when I'm in a movie theater rather than at home with distractions. That's why you and I, since the pandemic started, we've really been worried for our film going experience going forward because we didn't know what would happen to movie theaters. So I'm sure for a fact, especially given some of the filmmaking on display in this film, I would have enjoyed this movie more in theaters. That being said, it was still a phenomenal watch. I did have to break it up into two. So I did the first hour and a half in one sitting, and then the second hour and a half in another. And that it allowed me to kind of take a break. Also, I had to watch WrestleMania in between, so I just needed that time because I couldn't miss that. And it's a 3-hour movie, but for me, and I kind of want to get your perspective from it from like a broken up standpoint, it kind of feels nonstop, just kind of foot to the gas pedal at all times. Even when something slow is happening, it feels like something is still happening. Is that what you felt even in a more broken up watch or rewatch actually for you?
Honestly, yeah, because I kind of forgot how much I didn't really understand of the movie, if I'm being completely honest. It's captivating because the performances are awesome. The firefights are honestly, to this day, just as I finish rewatching it, I don't know if I've seen a better firefight. The sound itself, it is ear piercing. I would have loved to see that in the theater. The final shootout was just, at one point I'm like, all right, we're just shooting guns to shoot guns, but I'm in 100%. This is wildly dangerous and irresponsible by the LAPD, but I'm in. But it kind of segues. There's like 3 big jobs. I kind of forgot that there's basically 3 heists. You have your one in the beginning. You have the middle one where they're trying to like get some medals or something, but they stop halfway through. And then it segues pretty quickly into the final bank heist, and they're kind of doing 2 jobs at once. It's one of the few films where I watch it, and as things go down, like 10 minutes after a scene happens and I'm watching the next scene, my brain is still processing the last scene. I'm like, oh, so that's why we're doing all of this.
I actually found a bit of the movie. So after the first half of watching, I texted you and I was like, this movie's really fun. I just don't know what's going on. There's so many different. I actually heard someone say this the other day. They said that the movie is more so about watching people than it is about the crimes themselves. And I think that's a really good take because although because you mentioned that the medal, the crime for stealing the medal, which is a conversation point for Robbie D finding the love of his life in this film. That it almost doesn't feel like a crime scene because it's so short lived, right? the two main crime scenes that are extremely enthralling. Uh, they it's not what the movie's about, but it kind of is what gets you into the door, like immediately, at least in the first act of the film, when you see just this psycho with a mask on eyeing down this guy who's clearly concussed, and you know for a fact he's gonna kill him. I don't know why. I don't know that this guy's a serial killer, but there's something about him that's unsettling, and I think he's gonna kill him. It it just kind of brings you to the dance, and then you realize, you know what it's kind of like? It's like going to a restaurant, hearing that their dessert's really good, and then finding out, oh, they also have really good steak here. Awesome. This was a really pleasant meal overall. And that's kind of what this movie is. And it's kind of a rare movie experience in that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely a character study, and you kind of realize it as the film wraps up. You're like, it's not so much like the two people meet each other at like the midway point. They have a true face-to-face conversation, and you could tell they like respect one another. And if Pacino really wanted, like, he could have arrested him right there, but he wants the big piece. He wants to get him like 50, 70 years in prison. Like, it's prison or a coffin. I'm not doing 6 months, whatever. That's why he lets him walk after that idiot sits in the car. A lot of decisions I'm going to be talking about throughout this podcast, but I think they do a very good job of like working off of each other. I'm all for Al Pacino's overacting. It's the best thing I've ever seen. It is. I can't entirely pinpoint when he stopped being subtle and became an overactor, but
I would say
goddamn it,
early
was he
80s.
amazing.
I would say early 80s
So
is
like
when
when
that
he started
started.
doing cocaine, then when everybody
Um,
was just sharing pounds of it, he was like, "Let's just yell."
you know what's funny? He's said that he believed. I think the early drafts of the script, his character Vincent had a serious cocaine problem. So that is people have said that's the reason why he's acting like that, and it explains it. But here's the thing: I don't even need that to be the reason why. And this was one of my takes coming out of this movie. I miss this. I miss when people would just go for it. I listened to the Rewatchables pod on Batman 1989, and they talked about uh, Nicholson's Joker and whether or not he was going too hard. And they all agreed that he wasn't going too hard, and that was part of the fun of that film. I kind of just miss when actors were just going for it. Like Pacino in this film, I texted our buddy, the Appetite Avatar. I texted him and I said, in this film, there's that phrase 0 to 60. He's going from 60 to 100 in every single scene at the drop of a dime. Out of nowhere, he'll just go, "You're gonna give me everything you got."
How they got through that scene is beyond me. I dropped my computer. I laughed so hard. I forgot that he says that. And the great ass scene, don't even get me started. When I see a great ass, it does something to me. It's like, what the fuck?
I really hope that was ad libbed, that second portion, because you could tell he was gonna say the word big. He goes, "She's got a," and then his lips go together like a B. He was gonna say big, and then he was like, "Nope, I'm gonna correct it." And then he just goes for it, and then he's making that hand signal like he's cupping both cheeks. It's very strange, but it's overall, it just kind of draws me in. I'm just like, I'm in for this. The writing is incredible, which I want to get to in a little bit as well. The action's great. De Niro's being a little bit more of the subtle guy.
Well, I think
And
they play off each other well in that aspect because if they are both being manic, like it'd be off the charts. But for him to be
yeah,
so calculated and to a T, and for the detective to be the one, like, are cops happy? We need to ask some of our police friends out there. Are they ever rated divorce is what, 500% always? Guy's on his third wife. What are we doing here, bud? Just get a girlfriend.
and I mean, this one by the end of the movie, marriage is over.
She's like, "You think this can work?" He's like, "You serious?"
I just, yeah, I just love it. Do you feel the way that I do though? In that, like, did you ever watch The Lighthouse?
I have not yet. No, it's on my gotta watch as soon as possible list.
That's kind of one where you have to I don't know, maybe you have to do like ayahuasca before watching it, something to where you're like in a specific mood. Just for the record, neither of us do ayahuasca. That was just an off the cuff comment. But in that movie, Willem Dafoe and Pattinson are just kind of going for it, and that's kind of part of the fun of that film. Do you miss the days when actors, especially big movie stars, and I want to get into a movie star discussion later as well? Do you miss the days when big movie stars were just kind of going for it in really good films?
I would say yes, because when there's overacting that's bad, and then there's overacting that's good. I'm trying to think. You know, this is the example I always draw on. Marky Mark, sorry, I got to call you out. In The Happening, Mark Wahlberg is absolutely atrocious. But I heard in an interview that he was trying to mimic M. Night Shyamalan as M. Night Shyamalan would speak to him. And when you watch it again with that mindset, it's still like not good, but I love it because in his head he thinks he's great. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when you overact, but you hear cut and you're like, fuck yeah, I did that scene. Like I crushed that. That's everybody's gonna clap for me when I get to my trailer. And I'm sure there's some people that are like, we're really gonna keep this clip. This is what we're gonna do. But to have that just brash confidence to say a line how you want, and you're like, I'm not going again. That was perfect. I meant to stutter. It's part of the character. That's awesome. And it to me, like it brings light into the very just like intense, hectic film. I feel like you're supposed to laugh at those moments, like because you're so awkward and uncomfortable. You're like, do I look at the floor? What do I do? Like, if he yelled at me like that, I'll just giggle the whole time. Like, what do you want me to say? I can't stop, man. You're too much right now.
Whose performance is your favorite in this movie? Do you have a favorite, or is it just kind of like an ensemble for you? I have a favorite.
I mean, I love Pacino. I secretly love Val Kilmer in the beginning because he's a freaking wreck. He robs millions of dollars. I just want to set the stage. If you haven't seen the movie, full spoilers, we talk about it. These thieves are stealing millions and millions of dollars at a clip. You split that between 3 or 4 guys. Okay, if you take, I don't know, I'm not good at math. You take $9 million, split between 3 guys, it's 333. Within a day, he burns it on bookies, and then he throws glass because his wife won't go out to eat with him. It's like you just lost $3 million, bro. Get your life together. But I secretly love him. I would say like Pacino's my one, but Kilmer's like a strong 1A for me.
This is the third film that we've discussed in a row this year where there has been a supporting character who steals every scene that they're in. First was Marissa Tomei in Crazy Stupid Love. Then it was Colin Farrell as the Penguin, which is sneaky best performance of the year so far. Just saying.
Yeah.
In terms of like modern films, and Kilmer in this movie, just it made me long for Val Kilmer. To be honest with you, I was like, I need more Kilmer movies. This movie makes me. I secretly like his version of Batman. I think he's good in that movie. This made me go, he should have been in the sequel. He should have been Batman and Robin.
Well, his Batman came out the year this also came out, correct?
Was Batman Forever 1995?
I
You might be right.
believe so. You could see his jawline. I noticed with the jawline, I was like, now I can see why they gave him the cowl. Like it makes sense. It all flows.
They they had to have uglied him up a little bit because Val Kilmer, especially in the 90s, was like gorgeous. So in this movie, he kind of looks a little bit more. The term I would use is grizzled.
He kind of looks like swollen. And he had like a crazy contusion on his elbow. I don't know if you noticed that. There's a scene where he is like, it was absurdly bad. I don't even know how he bent his elbow. I feel like there's a backstory to that they just never talked about, but it's when his wife, like he throws all the stuff because his wife won't go out to dinner because he's a fucking loser. And then he sleeps at De Niro's place. He's just sitting there with this massive contusion. Like he just looks like a wreck all the time. That's just a side note. I was like, Jesus Christ, it's a massive contusion.
No, I didn't notice that, but I'm glad you mentioned the wife's place. By the way, shout out to not having furniture in your home.
First minimalist ever.
Yeah, Robbie D just setting every single trend possible.
2 glasses of each kind, 1 fork, 1 knife, and a bed.
It really makes you wonder, like, hey, Edie, why him?
if a conversation starts with "I work in metals," you walk away. If and then when you start flirting, but he is asking you questions like he is an undercover cop, you walk away again. I get that
Yeah.
people are broken and they want some love, but if I work in metals is the line they get you now. I'm out. I'm out.
Well, can we talk about some of the romances in this film?
Yes, please.
That's something that I found sneaky interesting. All three of these. So I'm talking about Chris, who is Val Kilmer, Vincent, and Neil. All three have their own relationships. And there's the line that De Niro delivers, where when you sense the heat around the corner, you have to be able to drop everything in 30 seconds, I think is what he says, right? It's, to me, one of the more fascinating things about the way that all these characters lined up towards the end of the film is seeing how that line kind of describes who each character is. Pacino, as Vincent, is kind of the only character who's willing to do that for his work. Neil, he tries to have his cake and eat it too, and it winds up failing him in the end. And Chris, straight up, is just not willing to drop it until he's forced to.
Yeah, I feel like Neil always wanted love because he made a point to tell the woman like I'm alone, but I am not lonely. Like he was offended she said that. But when you live in a beautiful place with a bed, two spoons, and a glass for water, you're alone, dude. Like you're alone. So when he meets her, I feel like he wants to be with her so bad. It pains him to leave her at the end, where Pacino's ready to go, like you said, at a moment's notice. Oh, duty call's got to go. And then when his wife, for the nth time, is like, "Why don't you talk to me?" He's like, "Baby in a microwave. Let's just make it dramatic." It's like, all right, geez. All you had to say was that a rough day.
I love the baby in a microwave. Pacino's just kind of just dropping bombs all over the place in this film. I love it. Whose relationship? I want to ask you, whose relationship did you buy the most, and whose did you buy the least? I can give you my answers if you need to think about that for a second.
Of those three,
Yes.
honestly, I kind of like the Pacino. Also, shout out Pacino just making out first scene he's in. Way to go, him. So there's like a lot. I was like, all right, Pacino, we get it. You're dogging. Cool. Uh, I also forgot that happened in the beginning. I was just like flabbergasted. I was just like, oh, okay. I like his relationship. Not so much with his like, I guess his third wife. I don't. Are they? All right, so
Yes.
she's confirmed
Third
the
marriage.
third wife. Okay. I really like his relationship with the daughter, although that's not like kind of in the group. I think that's the most genuine. I think that he loves like the idea of a family. He's not good at it. Clearly not made for it. He admits that wholeheartedly in his candid speech to De Niro's character. The one that I buy the least is me personally was Kilmer's relationship. I feel like it felt, I don't know. De Niro's was also kind of weird. It almost felt kind of forced. Like he wanted it really bad, and she was like, "I'm just like a ditzy no one, and I don't know any better. Like you work in metals, you seem trustworthy." I felt his passion in the relationship. It just felt kind of off. But the Kilmer one was the one that's like, this just is just like weird. Like I don't know. It felt like cartoonish, chaotic at points. Like you
I
just
think
leave
the
this
issue
guy.
with I think the issue with the Kilmer one is the biggest issue is that we didn't see enough of them together. They're kind of in that first scene when he explains that he blew all his earnings.
Super Bowl in Vegas cleaned me out.
Yeah, and then are they even in another scene together?
There's a lot of go between. The last scene that I can remember them together, and they're not even actually together. It's when she waves him off to get away. So like
Yeah,
she's secretly like father of a child. You're in this abusive relationship. You don't know any better. You love him, whatever. But I think the rest of the movie is a lot of go between. But that, I guess, that kind of represents their relationship well. You know, like we know people that sometimes they're not really meant to be with each other, and there's a lot of go between for that relationship to work, and that's clearly not healthy. But you always have people kind of speaking for each other and like being a middle communicator. I feel like De Niro, his character, he said like give him one last chance, but I feel like he said that three times, before this like set of their life was filmed?
Oh no, he did say that his word meant something. So I like to think that he didn't, but you're probably correct. I would agree with you that I bought Vincent's relationship the most, specifically the fact that he was a seemingly good guy who was too obsessed with his work. That just kind of usually, given the proper actor, it usually just works in a movie. It just kind of works on screen, and I just bought it. I love that he grabs the television and leaves with it when he finds
You're
out that
gonna
his wife's.
ball my wife. That's what he says. If you're gonna ball my wife, I don't even know what that means. If you're gonna ball my wife, go ahead, but you're not gonna watch my television.
And I love that, like, the TV's broken right away because the first thing he does is he smacks it when he says that. So it's like, man, you might as well throw it out of your window, even though you're a cop and that's against the law. You can't be throwing TVs out your window, my guy. But and I'm not remembering who the actress is who plays his wife in the film, and I feel very bad for it, but she does a great job.
Her name is Diane Venora.
Thank you. She does a great job in the film, I think. You really buy. I personally bought that she's someone who, like, it seemed like she did the cheating to get back at him.
I think she tried to do that to get him going. So like they could then fool around later. Like, in order for me to get your attention, I have to go out and get a guy. Like, that is the most unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, it was rough. And didn't know Natalie Portman was in this film. And I think that while I was confused by her at first, she hooked me by the end. I will say though, the I will say, just because this is going to be on the internet, unaliving scene, very intense and out of nowhere, and kind of like jolted me back a little bit.
Are you talking about the end?
Yes, at the end when she's in the bathtub.
Oh,
I just don't want to use the term for it because YouTube does not like it.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Yeah, I also, again, because I saw the movie years ago, I completely forgot that scene was in there, and I feel as though she had more in. I feel like there's more story to her character because she's good in the movie, and her first scene is really good when she's upset about the bracelet or whatever. She's upset not because of that, but like all she wants to do is see her dad, and her dad's a complete POS. He's never gonna come, and the mom feels like that sadness. At first, she's annoyed, and then she realizes, like, no, I need to be there for her. But I think Pacino's character shines when he is trying to like be a father to that daughter. I feel like he'd be a very good, or very good is too strong. I feel like he'd be a pretty good dad, but like not a good husband. Like he would love his kid, he would do his best for his kid, he would work, but like he's gonna be there for his kid. He'll miss some stuff, but like if he's gonna be there, he's gonna be there. He's gonna help you. But he sucks at being a husband.
It kind of fits with his character because he's a in this film is he a detective? Is that his legitimate
I think it's
position?
like detective lieutenant, something along those lines.
Whatever he is, he's a protector. And what do you have to do to a child? You protect them. He's not in the business of protecting his relationship, but he's in the business of protecting this person who, not an adult yet, still has time to grow, still has time to make mistakes, and is still innocent. He even he seems to want to protect people he respects as well. It seemed as though he didn't want to have to take down De Niro after the coffee scene. He kind of says it when he's like, "I may not like it, but brother, you're going down."
Well, he respects his craft. He respects someone that works as hard as he does at what they do, and whether it's good or bad, he respects that grind.
Yeah, and they're equals in that moment. Well, but I don't want to get to De Niro or Neil just yet. I want to kind of focus in on Pacino and Vincent here. Is it crazy to you that when I think of Pacino, I think first and foremost of Michael Corleone. That's just me, and I feel like a lot of other people do as well. You've seen this film before. Is Vincent now up there for you in terms of what you think of when you think of Pacino?
Vincent is, if I'm being completely honest, I think my preferred Pacino is a subtle Pacino with a few yells. So his Michael Corleone is impeccable. He is menacing. He is unnerving. When he speaks, you listen, and when he raises his voice, you bow down. Like, I love when characters can say a lot without saying a lot. But I would say his like when I'm thinking or trying to tell people like, oh, you got to see these Pacino movies, it's always going to be Godfather, and then I'm going to say Heat because his range and his just wildness is unimaginable on different levels. And to some people, they might be like, "You think this is good?" But it's like you said, he's just going for it. He's doing what he wants. He's confident as shit in what he's saying. He owns every scene he's in. You don't know what he's gonna do or what he's gonna say. Like I feel like when he said "Give me all you got" when he cut that guy off, one of the CIs, I feel as though that was unplanned because he just cuts him off and the guy just starts stuttering over himself. And he just keeps saying, "Give me all you got, give me all you got, give me all." He says like 3 times out of nowhere, but it's definitely up
Don't
there for sure.
waste my effing time. He's just dropping gems constantly, and I would agree with you that this has probably replaced Scarface for me as my number two when I think of Pacino performance. Not in terms of his best performance, Scarface is. Might be his most entertaining still, but this is up there as well. Yeah, I think that he just kind of brings an energy to a movie that already has an energy of its own. Now, on the flip side, De Niro and Neil. When I think of De Niro, I've seen quite a few De Niro films. When I think of De Niro, oddly enough, I don't think of Don Corleone first. When I think of him, I think of Taxi Driver first. That's my
I think of
favorite.
Goodfellas first.
Interesting, but you know why it's interesting to me?
I've also
I
seen that
think
movie like 100 times. It's one of my favorite
well,
movies ever.
that in my opinion is the greatest crime film of all time. That's just me. Goodfellas. I mean, I think that the Goodfellas performance. Would you agree that that's the quintessential? I'm sorry. Did you say Goodfellas or did I mishear
No,
you?
you're correct. You're saying Goodfellas, but I just thought of this as you brought this up. Their trajectories in their craft, they kind of reverse each other. De Niro starts loud as a young actor and more manic and becomes subtle as he gets older. And Pacino was very subtle as a young actor and becomes very eccentric as he gets older. That's
That's
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah, that is actually a really good point.
I
Wow, I
just
never
thought
thought
of it.
about that. Wow, um, that's actually a really cool point. I'd love to kind of watch like the.
Like where it
I'd love to.
intersects.
Yeah, I'd love to go back and forth in terms of like from the beginning and end of each one and just kind of go backwards. Uh, but would you say that the Goodfellas performance is kind of like the quintessential De Niro performance? Bad guy, kind of a leader in a film, isn't necessarily trying to steal scenes, but kind of does it anyways by accident.
Not only would I say that, but he's one of the few actors where he is Robert De Niro all the time, but he's so damn good at it. He's great in everything. Like you, I don't blame people when they confuse his character in Casino versus his character in Goodfellas because it's same director, same cast, different stories, but in the same timeline. But his demeanor is great as both. There's subtle differences, but it's so much of like the same. But you're like, it's so good. I want more of this all the time. You do it so well. It's a service to see it. So I don't want you to change it. I don't need you to change it. But when he does change things up, like Taxi Drivers, to me, a huge change up, even though it's early in his career, he's scary. Like what he can do. And there's another movie that came out on the 80s, Cape Fear, which is kind of like Taxi Driver esque. He's like a unhinged guy. I still have not seen that one. I need to, but I heard in that one too. He's like super unsettling, very unnerving. And it's cool to see him just kind of let loose sometimes because I'm used to seeing him so much as a reserved, like, you better listen, you better listen. And then something happens because nobody listens, but he doesn't have to like yell, you know?
Yeah, he kind of does like you and I often and after that Avatar complain about two actors nowadays, being The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, as constantly just kind of playing themselves. But for some reason, uh, Robert De Niro kind of is akin to like that one great pair of pants that you've had for years that you're never going to throw away. They fit you just right. People have seen you in them 1,000 times, but it doesn't matter because it's classic and it just kind of fits you.
Do you think that, I'll just say for you and I can't speak for everybody else, but do you think that we are more okay with Robert De Niro basically being De Niro in all his films because it's more subtle and we're more annoyed that Reynolds is like sarcastic so much? It's like, okay, we get it. Like, try something new. Is it the energy that we don't like? Because I agree that they both kind of do their thing throughout their film chronology, but for some reason I am less like bothered by De Niro-ness. But with Reynolds, I'm like, you do Deadpool so well. Why don't you try something else? Don't do Deadpool in every movie. You know what I
I'll tell
mean?
you right now what the big thing I think might be for you and definitely is for me. De Niro is doing this in films that are kind of blowing us away. Reynolds and The Rock maybe each have max each 2 or 3 movies that blew us away.
That's very
Where
fair.
De Niro is like his peak is like Jordan-esque, where it's just kind of like he's always winning the title. He's like the male Meryl Streep to me, where he's just kind of you put him in a film, not later on in his career, unfortunately, just because he kind of was doing more fun stuff. But he can do whatever he wants. He's a solidified legend. But I would say from like age for him, gosh, maybe 30 to his late 50s, whatever you put him in, it was gonna be a banger.
Yeah, I would agree. The way you stated that makes sense. It's because he's just picking better films. Honestly, I guess.
Like if Ryan Reynolds, let's just use Ryan Reynolds for an example, because the issue with The Rock is he's such a physically large guy. It's kind of hard to put him in like a more subtle film. Although I do think he's a good actor. He did one movie where he's like chasing after his son or something, or a stepson, that I thought was actually pretty solid, and I wanted him to do more. But with Reynolds, like let's say you put Reynolds in a movie like Goodfellas. I think his brash personality works, and I think we would be more into it in that case. You were gonna say?
No, I was gonna say that makes sense. If you take his shtick, but you just put it into a better film and you tweak it slightly, it just pays off. Because you're right. If you make like B movie after B movie after B movie, but it's the same thing, then we go in expecting mediocrity, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with Deadpool, I think the difference is that that was such like a fan dream cast for so long, and it got squashed in the late 2000s with or early 2010s with Origins Wolverine. I think that's late 2000s, 2009. That people were just kind of clamoring for it, and when we got it, it was like, yes, this is exactly what we wanted. So I would just like to see him do some more different stuff. You can be that type of personality, but put it into maybe some more interesting character-driven films. I still need to see Free Guy though. I heard that movie's really good.
I watched it. It's fun. It is what it is. I mean, it's not gonna. Some people like hated it or like really hate on it, but
Really.
I guess they're mad because it's like it tries to tell you the message of like be unique and be original, but then there's like a bunch of IP, but like just it's a popcorn movie. Just go watch it. Like that's not gonna cure cancer. All right. It's not gonna solve the world's problems. It's just like a silly movie, but it works. And he is good in it. And the movie is a good film. So like one I want to see is the Adam Project. I heard it got pretty good reviews. And I was pretty shocked because it looked like garbage on the trailers. Now, is it going to be the best? No, but I'm curious, like, if he can bring, I heard in that he's like a little more subtle, like still kind of sarcastic, but more subtle. Subtle Reynolds is good. There's one where he's buried alive. I think it might just be called Buried. He's really good in that. It's just him, a cell phone, another guy on the other end of the line, and he's just underneath, like 6 feet under. It's like hour, 25 minutes. But he's great because he uses the sarcasm as like a source of, I'm so scared. I'm trying to relieve myself, but I am frightened. And he is a different version of himself. He's really good. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It was like earlier in his career, but it's good.
See, and I can't remember if I've seen the whole film, but or bits and pieces of it. I definitely saw the ending, which I was like, whoa. That's an example of putting his shtick into a film where it kind of highlights his strengths and hides his weaknesses. And going back to Robert De Niro, I don't think he's a guy with many weaknesses, to be fair. I just think that he kind of, again, he settled into that pair of that good pair of jeans with a little bit of give to them. That old beat in pair of Levi's. He might be my favorite performance in this movie though, over Pacino. I think Pacino's more fun to watch, but De Niro, Neil McCauley is a deplorable human being. He's not a good guy, but De Niro makes him likable. To where, like, at the end, did you want? I mean, granted, I've never seen this movie, and I've had zero spoilers for this film throughout my movie watching life, which is pretty cool. That rarely ever happens. I had a feeling he wasn't going to make it out of the film alive based on the diner scene. It had that vibe to me. And when he's driving off with Edie, I kind of had a feeling like, no, he's not going to do it. Did you want him to drive off with her by the end? Because that's where I was at.
Well, one of my problems with the film is that he's so calculated and like controlled, and everything is to a science. And I respect that. Yes, is he like just objectively horrible, terrible? But I like a guy who's on time. I respect that. But on second watch, and the more I think about it, I think it's very smart for his character to go against his judgment to go back and kill Wangro, which is just a great scene because it shows how evil he is, because he says, look me in the eye, and then he kills him, which I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Get your revenge and then some. Make him look you in the eye. And the guy's like ready to cry because he's so scared. That guy Wangro is a giant piece of shit. But as I digress, I think it was smart to have him break because he never had love or anyone he cared about that much in his life, minus his crew. But all of his crew follows the same rules. If there's heat, you leave. We find each other some way. Like, he's not in love with his crew like that. He cares for those men, but the feelings he has for that woman, no matter how rushed they may be because it's in a movie, I like that he breaks his own rule, and he knows it's going to screw him up, and he's like angry about it, but he's like, I need to get this revenge. I need to do this, like, for me. I think him finding that woman may have brought him some joy and happiness, but it definitely ruined his system, and because the system was ruined, he was doomed to fail. And that's where Pacino, even though he thinks he lost, he was pretty good at predicting his movements throughout the film. The one thing, the Slick alias, how that becomes like a Slick. I feel like Slick is a common nickname. I don't know. That was a little weird. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think. I like that his character does that at the end of the film. The first time I was like, if you're so good, why don't you just fly away? But also, there wouldn't be a movie, you know?
Because you could probably end the movie with Pacino hugging his wife and with De Niro driving off with Edie. You could end the movie right there.
Would you be satisfied with that? It
That
does
was
wrap up their storylines. That was a great point you made. It does actually wrap up their storylines well.
You could do it. However, you don't get that scene at the end where Pacino holds De Niro's hand as De Niro dies.
Yeah, and he says, I'm not going back. I told you I was going back. It comes back to that mutual respect. And the movie builds to them so much, it would honestly be a disservice if you don't see that. But you're correct. I never thought about that. If you just cut it where he's hugging his wife after saving his daughter and De Niro rides off into the sunset, everybody gets their ending. Because like you said, it's more about characters than it is about the actual crime.
Yeah, and you assume Chris got out and is just going to live an unhappy life. However, you could also make the argument that that character deserved it after being a not good partner. So it's kind of like, well, his partner, Charlize Theron, who's really good in this film, didn't know she was in it either.
That is not Charlize Theron.
I thought it wasn't, and then I Googled it. You know what's so funny, dude? I thought it wasn't. I Googled it. It said yes. So I was confused. And then her name is Charlene. And I'm leaving this in the pod because this had to have happened to other people as well.
It's fine. People get actors and actresses confused all the time.
Does she not look just like her, though?
Yeah, there's a movie that Charlize Theron made. It's called That Thing You Do. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a riff on the Beatles. This group of kids in like Wyoming have a one-hit wonder. It's pretty fun. It's whatever. But in that movie, Charlize is like a blonde, it's like she looks exactly like Ashley Judd in this film. So for the first second, I was like, oh, is that Charlize? Because I also thought that when I first watched it. But I was like, no, it's Ashley Judd.
Well, Ashley Judd, great in this film. And it's you feel good for that character having complied with the police. So now you think that she's not an accessory to the crime. I don't know how legally that would work. But hopefully she doesn't have to go to prison.
Well, she breaks that. She lies to the cops at the end.
Yes, but they don't find out that she lied.
No. That ID check is some BS. Wouldn't you have like a real cop? Not that SWAT is not real, but wouldn't you have like one of the detectives checking that car? Like, I feel like that's really important. Just be like, yep, James Peterson, he's good. He can't pick his left arm up, but he's good.
Well, the police in this movie, which is going to be one of my issues with the film, are not that great, my friend. They're pretty pretty dangerous and pretty terrible at their jobs, aside from Pacino. And even he's kind of like, dude, you shot at someone holding a child. It's pretty wild. But we'll get into that in a little
You
bit.
can't do all that cocaine and be a great shot.
I think that if you end the movie there, it kind of leaves you feeling. So I said I watched WrestleMania last night, right? One of the things that was awesome about that WrestleMania is now split into two nights. It's night one, night two. Fun fact, the one WrestleMania I ever went to went almost 8 hours, and it was so long that even though that was one of my bucket list events that I wanted to attend throughout my life, one time was enough. Can't do it again because it was just, I was beat by the end of it. That's besides the point. What was great about last night, and I'm raving about it today, is because it left the audience in a state of going, wow, that was awesome. I'm so happy for these people specifically. For those of you who don't know, Stone Cold Steve Austin came back after 19 years and was able to have an actual retirement match in his home state against a guy who people love and is underutilized. And his name is Kevin Owens. He's an awesome guy and an awesome performer. So you just kind of felt good. If you end the movie where Neil is driving off with Edie and Vincent and Justine are embracing, seemingly getting back together through this dramatic experience, you're seeing these actors that you love so much in a state of either relief or kind of bliss. You're probably going, you know what? That was a fun movie. That's probably the feeling that you have walking out of it. I got to see Pacino going a full 10 in this really great crime thriller. I got to see De Niro being his subtle, beautiful self with the great slick back that he's had since forever. Man still has an amazing hairline to this day. That was awesome. But that's kind of not what this movie's supposed to be, I don't think. It's not a movie where you go, that was fun and awesome. It's a movie where you go, man, that was some fun sprinkled over some really, really deep and great stuff. And I think it's kind of it's not a pick your poison sort of thing. It's more of like a pick your treat, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm just baffled. The reason we picked this is because of Oscars, right? So for those that don't know, the Oscars happen in March. We're not going to be talking about everything else that happened at the Oscars. Doesn't matter to me. But I was looking over the 1996 catalog of like who was nominated, and this film received nothing. No nominations or recognitions in any of the fields. Now, do I need Al Pacino to be nominated for lead? No. And honestly, I don't know if he would go lead or supporting. And that could be I don't know, maybe audiences or voters were like, do we nominate Robert as head and Al as supporting, or will he like that? I don't know. But one that they should have been nominated for is sound design. And I don't know how in the world they didn't get recognized for that. Editing personally was a little bit choppy in certain parts. I don't know if you noticed. It might have been the copy I watched, but there was 2 or 3 parts where I was like, this is just, he starts here, he's here. Like, what did he teleport? What is this? But the sound, the guns, I've watched many movies. This puts Terminator to shame, personally. It is deafening. And I've heard that it was just the raw blanks they shot in the LA open streets. The sound editor didn't add in any sound. They went in, they listened to it, and they were like, you know, this is really raw. We're just going to leave this. Because the ending is honestly like heart pounding, deafening. At one point, it's like, is everybody just going to die? It becomes a little cartoonish because it's so hyper violent. But it's like, wow, that is piercing. I am doing little shoulder bounces every time they shoot their weapon. I just had to get my 2 cents out there on that.
No, you're right. I to be perfectly honest with you, I completely forgot the premise for this month's pod in terms of it being movies that were, because I was so enthralled by the film, I forgot that it was like no, you're supposed to be watching this not understanding why this was completely snubbed for everything. Michael Mann not getting a Best Director nod for this, to me, is the part that I find the most insulting.
Or screenplay.
But yes, you're correct. The screen, and I wanted to kind of get into the screenplay a little bit, but I've kind of gotten to this point now in my movie watching life where I have a newfound respect for directing. I think that being behind the camera is one of the most one of the portions of art where you need the combination of talent and skill. Talent meaning natural ability to kind of see. You have the eye. I harken back to like directors like Zack Snyder has the eye. You can tell he just kind of has that it factor that some directors just have. Nolan has the same thing, just in a different way. Uh, Michael Mann has so much style in this film, and I mean, some of these wide shots that we're getting and these intense close-ups at the end with seeing Pacino's face after he kills Neil. I found that shot. It was barely anything. It's just Pacino and
Full sweat. Full
sweat
sweat.
and blurred out lights, and I found that shot riveting. That takes a skillful director, and to not see him get recognized for that is not borderline embarrassing. It's fully embarrassing, in my opinion. Again, you mentioned De Niro. I think you can make a case that De Niro and Pacino should have got Best Lead Actor nominations. I think sometimes there's co-leads, and that's okay.
Have we ever had a film that had two leads go against each other?
I don't think so. The one time that it would have happened would have been was that movie called The Fighter? Is that what it was?
With Wahlberg and Bale.
Yeah, when Bale got his best support, he finally got his Oscar and was for supporting actor, even though he's in the movie just as much as Wahlberg is.
Yes.
However, you can make the case that putting him in supporting got him the win. Same thing happened, in my opinion, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Brad Pitt is, in my opinion, the co-lead of that film. He's kind of the most fun to watch in that movie, but he's placed in Best Supporting Actor and he wins. I don't know. You might be right that they looked at this movie and just kind of went, well, both of them are kind of in it equal amount. I don't know who to nominate for what, so we're just not going to nominate anyone. But if that's the case, then that's a really trash mindset. Now, granted, this was in the 90s, so.
I mean, I will say that the Oscars has changed personally for the better. I feel like they're recognizing more types of films. It's way more diverse, which is always a plus. Was this movie not cookie cutter enough? You think it was too action? Like a lot of people say the turning point was The Dark Knight because The Dark Knight wasn't recognized, and like they nominated Heath Ledger, but the Dark Knight film was not nominated for Best Picture, and that is to a lot of people in this industry, they say that's like when it all turned, and they opened it to more movies. I think it expanded to 10, and they tried to have like more diverse films. But like you said, if you watch it, like if you're like a true Blue Academy member and this is your whole job, hopefully you can see past all the gunshots and everything to see like the character depth and detail and just like the artistry that went into making. This is not just bam, bam, shoot 'em up. Like there's violence for sure, but it's at the very beginning, like a little bit in the middle, and like a whole lot at the end. But in between there is where like it's all the meat and potatoes there.
So, I while you were talking, I agree with basically everything you just said. By the way, I pulled up the Best Picture nominees for '96.
Yeah, I got him here as well.
So we have Braveheart, which won for Best Picture. Apollo 13. Is that movie pronounced Tu Pocino or Dos Pocino?
The Postman. It might be a French film.
Sense and Sensibility, which I just haven't watched that film, I'll be honest. And Babe. Look, I like Babe.
That's the one with the pig, right?
Yes. I like Braveheart. It's cool. Little overrated, in my opinion. Maybe that's a bad take. I don't know.
I've never seen it.
It's cool. I don't know, but you know what it is though. You can't take my opinion on that movie very highly, to be honest with you, because that time period of films just doesn't do it for me. You know how you're not a big space guy?
Yeah.
I'm not a big
medieval Scotland guy.
Anything medieval, anything where cars were not invented yet, I'm just kind of out on. I'll be honest. It doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is. I have yet to,
there ain't no RAV4s, I'm not watching it.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? Maybe Gladiator spoiled me, and just nothing meets that criteria, or I haven't seen anything aside from Gladiator that is good enough to put me in the mind space where I want to see people in chainmail and Browns
The
in
Last
really.
Duel, man. The Last Duel, criminally underrated.
I'm gonna watch it. You know what? Do you want to do that this year at some point? The Last Duel.
Heck yeah.
We'll see if we can when and where we could fit that in at some point this year. Um, Apollo 13. I've seen that. I saw that a long time ago. I barely remember that film though. I don't think it's hard to make an argument that that Heat should have been nominated at least for Best Picture.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think 5 is a little limiting. I'm happy they're up to 10. And yeah, some may say like the top 5, like you can figure out 3 movies that are locks, and then like the last 3 in the nomination list were there just to like give you a nomination. But it's still important to like to me, it's so important to recognize it. If we're gonna make up all these awards, then give them out to films and give these honors to films that are worth it, because then otherwise your made up award show is super useless. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you? I'll answer this for myself first. I care about the Oscars. I care about celebrating art. I think that the Oscars are the most well-known version of celebrating film, so that's why they matter to me. I also like that people complain often about the Oscars not recognizing movies that, and I'm quoting here, I don't believe this, quote, they don't care about movies that people actually like, end quote. I think that sometimes you need to recognize the highbrow films that casual moviegoers don't really watch or care about, because that's still art, and sometimes that's the highest version of that art that people just didn't go out and see. Do you still care about the Oscars? And just real quick, ignore what just happened. Ignore the 2022 Oscars
Oh
entirely.
yeah.
Go.
I really don't watch them that much. I think they're too long, and I wish it started an hour earlier. Oh, excuse me. Because I'm like, I get up at 4:30 and I gotta get up. So I need to go to bed. Like, I really wish it was shorter. I thought it was criminally disrespectful that they tried to crop out the 8 award winners. And if you realized, they only took maybe 12 minutes of just walking gone. It was still 3 hours and 30 minutes. Like, you still had everything. You just made those people feel like ostracized for no reason. But I think the Oscars, especially the Oscars, are important, but I think all award shows, especially like the BAFTAs, should be way more encompassing of all nationalities, races. I like that the Oscars are bigger. I just wish it was like it started earlier. I don't know. That's just like a side note. But I also agree that you don't need to nominate superhero movies. Spider-Man No Way Home does not need to be nominated. I loved it. You loved it, but it is not. There's tiers to films. There's popcorn movies. There's like high class, high concept films. There's stuff that you and I don't like, and we love all kinds of movies, but like, it's art, right? Some art you're gonna like, some art you're not gonna like. But having just 5 possible options, especially in the 90s, I think that's kind of silly. It's just so limiting. You have thousands of movies a year. I like that it's a 10.
Yeah, me too. I just think that this movie, I don't know that being Oscar nominated would have done it any favors, but I just think that this is the type of film that, like, so when Parasite won in 20, when it won the Oscar for Best Picture of 2019 in the 2020 Oscars, I found that to be a really exciting moment, because that's a movie that, quote, people actually liked. That also was a movie that I believed was the best film that year, and I don't think it was particularly close, to be perfectly honest with you. So seeing a moment like that, really cool. Like, let's say that Get Out had won Best Picture in 2018. That would have been a really cool moment, don't you think? Like, wow, okay, this was like a celebrated movie. It almost had 100% perfect rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'd still love to see the one person who didn't like the film. I find that to be, you're just a contrarian at that point. I'm sorry, but I'm saying it like it is.
Contrarian.
But I think that this would have been one of those moments where it's like, oh, people love this movie and it got nominated. Awesome, really cool. Do you have the film's finances up? If not, I'll pull them up.
I got them right here for you. So for Heat, it costs 60 million to make. Its opening weekend about 8 million. Gross in US and Canada was only 67 million, and then worldwide it made 187.
That's so interesting that it did so well overseas.
Well, I guess that was another complete half. So like it just made a profit basically.
Yeah, interesting. So wait, I'm sorry. You said, oh, okay. I understood what you were saying. I thought you meant that international box office was 160 million, not
Oh no, like
total.
everything together. Everything together was
Gotcha.
180, but
Gotcha.
US and
Okay.
Canada was 67.
Okay. Yeah, I think that if this movie comes out today, it's probably more celebrated in the moment, and people are going to see it more. Uh, a modern movie that I think you can kind of relate to this film, in my opinion at least, would be The Town, starring Ben Affleck.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically because it's about bad guys that you're rooting for because they're played by these icons. Just kind of, well, Jeremy Renner's going for it, but Ben Affleck's kind of playing the more subtle character. And that kind of transitions into that thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, where I had this overarching thought throughout the film that I couldn't shake. I, while I miss the big, one can argue, overacting performances in modern movie making, the other thing I really miss, and I don't remember if we've talked about this yet on the pod, I really miss the idea of movie stars, man. I really miss the days where, like, or think, I wish I lived in the days where you saw a trailer and it's like Pacino and De Niro in a movie together again. Oh my gosh, they're going head to head. Okay, I got to go watch this for that alone. You and I grew up with that in comedies in the early 2000s. That's what was happening, but it didn't really happen in dramas like that, and it doesn't do that anymore. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, I got you. It's like Schwarzenegger or Stallone. Like they rule the box office. They were one man entities, right? Um, there's give and take. I kind of like that you how do I say this? As years have gone on, I like that there's so many different ways that films can be created and financed and made, that super small nothing films can produce phenomenal actors and actresses. And sometimes I like that a movie's not on one person's shoulders but a whole ensemble, because it I think it's a true testament to the craft if you can have 10 people work well together to deliver a powerful film. Like, you don't just have one great person and then a few fillers, you know what I mean? But it is weird to think that we don't have, like, I guess, like The Rock, like you mentioned before, and we might have said this in another pod, but I feel like The Rock is one of the few last movie stars where you plaster his name on a poster. It's like Dwayne The Rock in all capitals Johnson, and like he will sell your whatever movie and you're gonna make money off of it. But yeah, it would be kind of cool to like get that 80s 90s nostalgia of just like, come see De Niro in Paperboy, and it's like, I don't know, this movie probably sucks, but it's De Niro, so I'm in. Like, let's go watch it.
You know who the last one that was on the trajectory to become the next big movie star was, in my opinion?
uh Let me guess. Tom Holland.
Mm, oh, I see. That's a tricky one because I don't think he was until this past December. I think that December kind of put him like, oh wait, hold on, is it happening again? Because I think he had so many duds.
That's what I was thinking, because with Cherry I wanted to see that and it got so many bad reviews. I was like, I'm like Uncharted. I love that game, but I don't want to see that movie. But like, he's the kind of guy that can get that movie made.
So you know what? You might be right about that. Tom Holland might be the modern one and the one who's kind of on the rise right now. But I meant the last one who was on the ascent, but then the age of the internet happened.
I have no idea.
Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence in the early 2010s was a money-making machine. Going from, and not in chronological order, X-Men Origins, or no, X-Men First Class, Silver Linings Playbook, the Hunger Games franchise. She just kind of felt like the next big movie star, both commercially successful and critically successful. And then what I think is the issue with modern movie stars now is the idea of, number one, celebrity is very different now. And number two, overexposure happen so fast nowadays because of how often people are in media, how often people have to do interviews and all that, and social media presence as well. It's both a blessing and a curse. The Rock is someone who has used his social media to boost his platform and to become cooler. Some people, however, they fall into the other side of that bracket. I don't know if Jennifer Lawrence has any social media. I don't think she does. But I think overexposure caused people to kind of get annoyed by her. You know who else this happened to? And social media definitely played a part in it. I'm not going to talk about any specifics, so don't worry. Chris Pratt was another person who was on the trajectory to become the next
Because
big
even I get a
movie
little
star.
annoyed now, Pratt boy.
And he's someone, he wasn't critically successful or as successful, but commercially, he was kind of a money printing machine. So now to harken back to what you said, do you think Tom Holland can kind of overcome the odds of a modern movie star and actually make it and become that next big box office and, which he hasn't yet gone to, critical success?
Well, I think the best thing he's got going for him right now is Zendaya, if I'm being honest.
Wow.
Their relationship, his ability to just be downright a beautiful man, and for him to seemingly do knocking on all the wood, no wrong. Even when he makes bad movies, people adore him. They're going to go watch it. Uncharted, I'm sure, is not that good. I'm sure there's fun parts, whatever. And one day I'll watch it on TV. But if I assume it made some money. I think it was fairly successful. I would have to check all the stats, but it's because of him. It's because of his presence, the way he uses social media, like The Rock. I don't know if he's like as promotey or whatever, but anybody who is any girl ever in any middle or high school has some affection towards him, and it's going to stay forever. He could be like the next Leo, honestly, if he plays it right with his trajectory. Now, does he have to pick better films, and does he need to like let Zendaya kind of pick some of his stuff? Yeah, he should, because she's a genius. She's doing great. But I think like their power couple celebritydom, I guess, has worked. And I think another thing with your social media, like we have social media, but we're nobodies, and we just like use it to talk to each other and like send memes, LOL, whatever. But I think what's so cool about all these actors from years ago is that everything you know is through stories. It's through hearsay. It's through I heard this time at this place. I'd say maybe 40% is true, but it doesn't matter. It sounds so cool. And yeah, like if you have a platform, you should maybe say things when you need to or whatever. But like you don't have to be posting all the time or other stuff. Like you lose the mystique, pun intended, because Lawrence hated playing mystique. There you go. You lose like the mystique and the allure of the person, right? And then you get to learn too much, and then that oversaturation starts. But like imagine there was a rule: once you become a celebrity, all social media has to go away.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be pretty cool, honestly.
I'm sure some of them would like it. Here are the other two that I think were on the verge of it, but maybe didn't want it. And you mentioned one of them already. I think Zendaya could have been the one. I don't know why, but she just doesn't seem to do that many movies. From what I've noticed, like, can you name that many Zendaya movies? I can't.
I know she did the one with
Malcolm and
on
Marie.
Netflix. Yes, Malcolm and Marie. Minus Spider-Man.
Not
Oh
many
my
come to
god.
mind. It's kind of
I
Euphoria is kind of her.
Her
Euphoria
wheelhouse.
is kind of where she is right now.
And she was like a Disney kid, right? I don't
Yes.
know. Okay, so then she
One
did all that.
one of the few Disney like success stories outside of Disney, which kind of proves her star power. The other one, who I think has just kind of made some either interesting or weird choices, Michael B. Jordan. Mike
Interesting.
Michael B. Jordan, in all honesty, should have been down in my opinion, uh, it's so hard bringing this name up right now. Should have been in the Will Smith uh, track of just kind of becoming, because at one point Will Smith was the biggest movie star in the world. He was the new um, Denzel. He was the new Leo. He was the new whoever
Yeah,
you want
he
to
was
say
the
it. That
it
was Will.
guy.
Yeah, he was the it guy. And I think B. Jordan, in my opinion at least, has the talent for it. He has the look for it, and he has the inherent likability for it. But I don't know what's happened where it just hasn't really happened. Like I mentioned Pratt and Lawrence because I can recognize objectively what happened to derail that from happening. With B. Jordan, I think maybe it was film selection. He just hasn't really done like that many,
It
like
could be
late
film
2010s. Eh,
Yeah, I think it's film selection. I think it's experimenting with directing. A lot of these people like to get behind the camera, like you started the pod with. And then I think it's the trials and tribulations of being a celebrity. Like, yeah, I wish I had millions of dollars. Like, oh, it's so hard to be them. But if like you really think about it, it probably does suck to be scrutinized all the time. I love that nobody knows who I am. I'm nobody to all people, unless I have my
it's
group of friends. Like, it's great to be anonymous. It must suck to always be watched constantly and judged everything you do, no matter how dumb or not dumb. Like, I guarantee De Niro and Pacino did stupid stuff, said stupid stuff. They definitely did, but no internet, little exposure. They had a great ability to control their narrative. That's huge. It's kind of like sports, right? Tom Brady's the GOAT because he controls his narrative. Nobody's writing anything for him.
Same thing with Michael Jordan. There were that the reason that documentary was a docu series was so enthralling is because a lot of it was stuff that we'd never seen before, and it's like, wow, we're getting to see a little peek behind the curtain.
And more basketball appetite avatar. I know you love it. LeBron James is actually an example of how being in the spotlight too long can help you raise and then tarnish your legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and a little peek behind our curtain a little bit. And this is the most I'll ever refer to this type of stuff. The reason we don't use our real names is by design. We kind of like a little bit of anonymity, at least. We don't want our specifically our last names out there at all, and that's part of the reason why I like not having video right now. It's kind of nice, just like we're just people with takes on the internet. You don't need to know us personally that much, and I just kind of like that idea. That's just me, and maybe I'm just like a maybe I'm just an old bitch. I don't know. I
Dirty old bitch.
yeah, I don't know, but I miss the days of the movie star, like I mentioned, and I kind of like your point about the mystique of it all. It was a really excellent point, and these guys are kind of embodying that. I know nothing about Robert De Niro. Do you personally? Aside from the fact that that brother is down, I don't know anything else about him.
I really don't. And I don't do any extra research because I don't need to know any anymore. Like, if they ever make a documentary on it, I'll be the first one to watch. But I like to just think of him as prestige actor. Everybody loved him. No crazy stories, hopefully.
Yeah. And again, this is the last I'm going to touch on it. I think that what's happened recently with Will Smith over the past couple of years is also an example, kind of like you mentioned with LeBron, where the overexposure can really hurt someone even on a personal level.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm even if you have something to say, I'm sorry,
I'm
just
good.
going to shut down.
We could just segue back to that Heat Daddy.
What's your favorite scene in this film? I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first. You go first.
Time. I know that the most iconic scene is the coffee scene. I understand that, but for me, again, from a filmmaking perspective, that like I don't know if that was a highway or like a city block shootout was filmmaking to the degree of just like inject it directly into my veins. Please.
At the end of the film, right?
Yes, when Val Kilmer gets shot in the clavicle, that scene is just it's so good. You mentioned the sound design in it. Those gunshots are piercing and they're scary, to be quite perfectly honest with you. And you know what it made me thankful for? It's something that you've talked about for years, and I used to not be on your side when I was young and dumb, but now I understand what you were trying to say. Practical, really built sets or real locations.
Hell yeah. The movie takes place all over Los Angeles. There's not although I think at the very end, there's green screen for that airport. I think because their silhouettes look weird, like their body looks weird on the back. It could have been the lighting, I don't know. But yeah, it's a very like lived in. I'm sure part of the reason it was so expensive is because they had to block off those streets and blow everything up, and then you got to clean that all up.
Yeah, that's just my personal favorite scene because yeah, again, I mentioned the town on purpose earlier because the town has a scene like that as well. I'm not gonna. We try not to spoil other movies on this pod while talking spoilers about the movie that we're discussing. But I will say the town has a scene like this shootout in it, which is also extremely enthralling, and it just kind of makes me. We talk about superhero movies a lot. I'm sure we haven't talked about this, but I'm sure next month the pod's gonna be based on a superhero movie coming out early next month, uh, which won't have a lot of practical effects in it. I'm sure it kind of makes me fall in love with real life sets in these big blockbuster films because it's so rare nowadays. And this kind of just watching it, although it was terrifying to watch because of the implications of people being shot at, it just kind of made the film nerd in me really happy. So what's your favorite scene, or do you have any thoughts about this scene that you wanted
Well,
to get
I
off?
definitely agree with that scene. I think it's hilarious that Val Kilmer does not put his mask on until like 5 minutes into the actual heist. So yeah, handsome guy with a ponytail, done. We'll find him right away. I like that scene. I like how like sloppy it gets and how uncalculated it becomes. And I really like how they start driving away and then the police are like, I'm gonna run on foot because I guess I can keep up with a car. And then I'm just gonna shoot every few steps and hope for the best. It is chaos at its finest. But one other scene that I would say that's probably my favorite, but one that I also really like is it's a smaller scene with the drop off when if I'm correct, in the beginning of the movie, they steal bonds from an investor. I have to close my eyes and think about this. That's how at one point I was just like lost. But they're going to give the bonds back and get money somehow. They're supposed to just be like a drop off or exchange. But do you recall this scene?
Yes, I recall the scene.
So you got Bobby De Niro saying like, "Go slow, give me the stuff," and the guy, it's supposed to just be one on one, but of course the bail bond or the investor bondsman guy has his guy going around to sneak up and shoot him, and then you have Val Kilmer perched on the roof, ready to attack, and it's just like I like that scene because it shows how calculated De Niro is and how like he was prepared to be screwed over three different ways because he had another man at the exit, right, with the shotgun. He had his boy up top. He himself was ready and loaded to go and shoot. And then the scene just wraps up miraculously with he's like, I'm talking to a dead guy on the other line, and then he hangs up. What a delivery! What a delivery! Chef's kiss.
Oh, oh, I
Some of
just
these lines, and honestly, they could come out super corny from other actors, because just objectively they're kind of like weird. Like you don't say that as a human being, but when De Niro says it, you're like, I gotta tell my parents I'm gonna die. Like that's it. It's over.
why did he stay in L.A.? Why didn't you leave? The guy told you you were
Oh, the
dead.
investment banker?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Van Zant was his name.
Yeah. Great evil guy. I guess more
Wh-
evil. I don't know. They're all bad. Van Zant. Good 90s name.
Yeah, played by William Fitchner.
Yeah, that's the banker in Joker or and the Dark Knight. Sorry. Yeah.
And speaking of Dark Knight, do we get that iconic scene in the Dark Knight without Heat?
Well, no, this is talking about. We're talking for over an hour, and I forgot to mention this. I was gonna say that all the tropes that people kind of harp on and like complain about now, it all came from this movie. And it's
You can see
cool to
it.
see it like how it's originally done. Because I'm used to seeing it all post 2000s, like, oh, like this set piece is so cool. To me, it's always funny that I'm like, this movie did it so well. And then you realize that it actually was in another film and the film you watched like borrowed it. You know, I'm always like, wow, I really did myself a disservice. And I also didn't give that director credit when I should have, because he was the one behind it. Like, I agree with you. I don't think you have that Joker or the Dark Knight opening without Heat because it's so reminiscent. The way that they talk to each other, the way it's stylized, and even the actor who has the canister in his mouth.
Or now that we were talking about it, do we get the Joker and Batman scene in the interrogation room without the coffee scene either?
Honestly, I don't know. I've
Because
heard that people have called Michael Mann the Nolans of the 90s.
all right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Heat might be top 10 all time.
All time ever.
It might be, bro. It's so iconic. I didn't realize that what you an owl is from this film. I attributed that to Marty all these years without knowing that was the
What are
tape.
you, an owl?
Um, and then the great like it all that this movie has it all. It really does. And you mentioned the dialogue, and this is the last point that I had to make on the film. We have talked before about strange dialogue. I remember we had this discussion. Gosh, was it for Zack Snyder's Justice League? Where sometimes it doesn't sound like they're humans. It sounds like they're characters. For some reason, in this film, it doesn't bother me. It feels like I'm watching Shakespeare, and I'm just kind of okay with it. Did it bother you in this movie when they got kind of poetic, specifically in that coffee scene? Um, did that very movie-esque dialogue ever like kind of take you out of it, or were you just kind of in?
Well, the way you put it is good. It's kind of like a play. Like if they ever try to do something again with Heat, if they made like a 6 episode HBO Max series, kind of like True Detective style, I think it could be done really well. But like those two characters seem like very how do I pronounce this word? Philosophical. That took me a second. They seem like philosophical people that can't connect with other people. You know what I mean? They're only
Mm.
compatible with each other, and they're the opposites of one another. But De Niro's brain is on a level where he's clearly in control of all of his henchmen. Without him, there's nothing. And Pacino is the only cop that is maybe smart enough because he doesn't have the time to explain to other people. Like he gets things. It's kind of like when you're in math class or whatever, and you get something and everybody else doesn't. You're like, yo, can you just figure it out already so we can move on? Like, not everybody's going to get it as quick as you, but I can understand how they talk to each other and why they talk to each other that way because of their beliefs and their values and the way that like they carry themselves throughout the film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally
And
get
their
what you're saying.
delivery of it is great. If it was other actors, it would be weird. It'd be forced. It'd be like it's corny. And I'm laughing not because like it's so like dumb, but it's like this is outrageous that this is happening right now, and people are supposed to be scared, and I guess they are because he's so unhinged. Like you just have to laugh.
Yeah. Also, awesome Danny Trejo appearance. Didn't know that he was in this movie either. Um,
I think his character's name is also Trejo.
it is. It
Which
is, and I
is
forgot he was in the movie at one point while watching the film because he's just
yeah.
kind of gone.
I would say because it is a little long, you kind of forget that. My one other like this is silly, but it's also a movie. De Niro, before you fall in love, you're cold, you're calculated, you know everything. Why do you always add one extra guy to the crew? Why? Why do we do that? Every time you add a guy to the crew, and I guess they just don't bet them, right? Like they're like, you know how to shoot a gun? Cool, cool, cool. Come on. That guy was off the hinge. All of it started because of him. Like
You
it's a
mean
tired trope now. Wangro?
Wangro?
Yeah, grossest, dirtiest person ever. But it's like De Niro. You're supposed to be this like super smart, great character. I can pick and control these guys. You go with him? Like, what are we doing? A movie's a movie's a movie. But now I see where that trope started with, oh, we got to get one more guy for the job. Who do you know? It's like, oh, I know a guy who knows a guy. He's good. I swear, I swear. And then he screws up and kills somebody, and then there's a whole movie. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree. A couple final questions. Did you feel as though the movie was too long?
Well, if I was in a theater, kind of like Batman, I might have felt it a little more. It feels a little bit long in the middle just because it's kind of like Batman. You have to change your expectations. It becomes less of a crime thriller and more like character study and analysis. Where Batman was, it's less punch punch and more detective and then punch punch. You know what I mean? So it felt a little long, but it was never. The ending is impactful enough and powerful enough where it's like, okay, these last 40 minutes is just like pure adrenaline. So I'm in. But what about you?
I thought that for me, what made me feel the length was more so getting confused at times. It was kind of like there's so much in this movie that I'm just kind of like lost as to what's happening. Like I forgot that Dennis, his name pronunciation is gonna mess me up. Dennis Haibserd is in this movie, and I still kind of forget what he did. The fact that John Voight is in this movie is like
Best
awesome to me.
haircut ever.
Yeah, super cool. And he just John Voight's just great in everything he
He
does.
looks like a guy that would get you the plans to steal up from a bank.
Uh
That's what he
huh.
looks like.
Yep. 100%. I mean, Jeremy Piven is in this movie. What? Hank Azaria, again, who's like known for Simpsons fame. It's a bunch of people in this film that I feel like almost get lost in the shuffle because of how much is jam packed in here. So I think that with how much is in it, it can kind of feel a little long, but I also don't know what I would take out from the movie to make it shorter, if that makes sense. Like I don't know.
I would agree with you. And I'm sure they even had to cut stuff because I feel like the Natalie Portman portion, there was like a little bit more story to her. But I think what they did with her with the 2 hours, 15 minutes, like you did enough. But there's levels to it. You need that second heist to show that the second failed heist. You need that, even though you could try to argue to cut it. I think you need it to show the LAPD's incompetence, which is just like, what are we doing? But then also for Neil and everybody to know that the heat is there and like it's going to get intense. And now like things are getting serious. And do we continue with this last job or whatever? You know?
Did you like that we never saw Lauren's father, her birth father?
Yeah, I was fine with that. I think it lended to the girl, to Natalie Portman's performance. It also lended to the mother and maybe why she's with Pacino and why it clearly is not. I don't think it's going to work, but she's going to try and make it work. But I was fine not seeing him.
Last question for me. Do you think we've gone too long on the pod?
Never.
If you have any points to discuss with us on this just absolutely incredible movie, let us know in either the comment section down below on YouTube, which we are on, Sweaty Dive on YouTube, or leave a, well, not even, or you, it would be awesome if you did both, but I'm happy with just one. Leaving us a comment in the reviews of whatever podcast app you listen to us on, as well as max star rating, because it helps out the podcast and helps us grow. Also, leaving a thumbs up on YouTube / subscribing to the YouTube channel would help us out as well. Whatever way that you can help get the podcast out there, it would mean a lot to us. Where can people find you, brother?
Instagram at KG4346. And if you want to check out any of my bands and music, it's at Above the Moon Music, or it's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your music from.
And if you'd like to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Buffcharmander GW. You can find like some art and stuff on there. And if you want to find any of any like video essays I do or whatever, or like just shorter movie reviews, you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Geeks Weekly. As we kind of alluded to next month, I think we can just kind of say it now. We're probably going to be discussing in the month of May, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Was that what you were thinking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So look forward to that pod. It's in terms of when it's going to be out, I assume the week after the film releases. We haven't gotten our tickets yet. They go on sale the week that we are actually recording this podcast. So we have to work on getting those. So just be on the lookout for that podcast. Really excited for it. Love Sam Raimi. Kind of like the first Doctor Strange movie. Are you excited for that film?
I'm very excited for Doc 2. I'm curious as to how Sam Raimi is going to do it. I think he's going to bring a very unique style to it. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm watching no more trailers, no more images, no more anything.
Yeah, me too. I'm just kind of ready for the movie. And I hope that you all are going to the movies and enjoying yourselves as well. I plan on watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I hope you all are watching stuff, enjoying stuff, happy and healthy. Once again, thank you all very much for listening to this month's edition to the Sweaty Dive podcast. Once again, I have been one half of your hosts, known as Buffcharmander, joined as always by KG.
Until next time.
Stay safe, stay sweaty, my friends.